So we'll do a couple million a year, like in funding amount. Primarily it's like owner operator truckers. This is primarily like I would say 70% of our business to some larger trucking companies too. But we have partners that work for invoice factoring companies that they only do truckers, so they send us deals.
Welcome to the Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. And I'm your host, Hannes Henschel. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Path to Wealth. I'm your host, Hannes Henschel. Today we have a special guest, Joe Nicolosi, joining us to share his wealth of knowledge in business funding and debt consolidation. Joe is the principal of Starcade Capital, a company dedicated to assisting small businesses, including startups, in navigating the competitive marketplace. He specializes in providing funding strategies that turbocharge businesses' growth and maximize profitability. Get ready to gain valuable insights on obtaining the necessary funding to take your business to new heights. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks for having me, Hannes. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, anytime. You're early riser over there in Arizona, so I appreciate the work ethic that you're putting in already. So what brought you into this space of funding and debt?
Well, I actually fell into it by accident. So I've been doing this since 2019. Founder of Starcade Capital here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Moved to Arizona back in 2017. I met a guy who was in business funding. Started working for him as a 1099 contractor, and was learning the business on the side, but never really got going with it until I decided to go off my own and really commit to it. So been doing that since 2019, helping business owners get access to capital outside of the traditional banks.
Yeah. So what kind of business owners do you usually work with? Who is someone that could approach you in, so that you can help them get their financing?
So primarily we work with a lot of construction, manufacturing, and trucking companies. A lot of banks don't like to touch trucking in general. So we have options for those guys, advances on revenue, invoice factoring, stuff like that.
Yeah. And where do you usually source the capital from?
So we have alternative lenders. Actually, a lot of them are in New York City over there. So the Regulation D funds, and we basically find the deal, bring the deal to them, and then get the offer out to the customer. Yeah. So it's just a mix of Regulation D funds and private investor funds, really.
Yeah, what are they usually looking for? What are the terms of those New York sharks that you just mentioned? What are they looking for?
So really, it's as long as you have a heartbeat and a 500 plus credit score. No, you have to have 10K plus a month in revenue, at least a 500 plus credit score to be considered. 6 months time in business at bare minimum. Prefer a year though. Prefer some time in business, and then we could probably offer you something.
That sounds like a low bar, like 500 in credit. It just means you're not completely messed up.
It is, but it's fast money.
Gotta get to 10K revenue, which I believe in the businesses you mentioned is also not like that far of a shot if you're actually committed to doing business.
Correct. Now, just because you're doing 10K plus a month in revenue doesn't mean you're going to get $1 million. So you write the file, last 3 months bank statements, look at your deposits, and then make an offer based on that. Typically we're seeing anywhere between 8 to 12% of a company's annual revenue as far as what we're able to lend.
8 to 10% of the annual revenue
of a company. Yeah, we can lend between 8 to 12% on average, sometimes higher.
Yeah. So that means the guy that makes 120,000 in revenue a year really just gets around 10K.
Yeah, he won't be getting much. Exactly.
Yeah. So at what stage does that get bigger so that he can actually make a substantial investment into his business?
Well, he could finance equipment, grow the company using equipment, increase his revenue, then get more working capital at that point. There's not just advances on revenue, invoice factoring, lines of credit. You have equipment financing. I mean, you can go out and raise money from friends and family, which a lot of people try in the beginning, but they realize, they're not successful with it. And then, of course, everybody wants to go to a bank like Chase or Wells Fargo and get approved, but you need good credit, you need time in business, and consistency in revenue.
So what are the terms that the banks demand of someone? Just so you
So
have like a comparison for someone who's
yeah,
listening.
bare minimum 680 plus credit score. Bare minimum, usually 1 year in business at least. There's a common program out there, 0% credit cards, meaning 0% interest APR for first 12 months. So you can get business credit, use that to fund your business. And
Yeah.
it's not one of our specialties. It's just an option for people that have the credit, 680 plus, and then yeah, you can use that credit.
I've seen that actually quite a lot floating around, where the people use that. And initially it looks like a full-on scam. The first time I saw that around, like, get zero interest rate funding for your startup.
About it.
It-
Mhm.
Till I realized, you just bang it all on the credit card that has 0%. So how do they work? I would assume that they actually hope that you don't pay it off in time, and then you're
Yeah.
getting into the real pickle on the back end where you're suddenly paying 20-30% in interest.
So they want you to max it out. Typically, like they want you to max, like say you get a $30,000 limit. Yeah, use
Yeah.
it all right away. And then you're kind of just making the payments every month. The next thing you know, 12 months in, boom, interest kicks in. Now you're paying. But like you can move money around with balance transfers and all that. I'm not like a credit card guru or anything, but
Yeah.
there's balance transfer techniques you can use. And there's some people that know how to use that system to their advantage and really capitalize on it.
So by balance transfers, you mean we're taking one card that's already in the position of interest rate and we're moving it to another card that still is at 0% interest.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you can just you can potentially just carry it forward from one lender to another, to another, and never get to the interest, at least until you're maybe in a better position.
Right. That's what they do. It's another way to grow your business if you can go that route. It's cheaper than taking a cash advance, getting locked into an invoice, factoring contract. If you can go that route, I'd recommend it first.
Yeah. So you probably also get the money faster. I mean, you're all it takes is being approved for the card, and you can start
Yeah.
hitting it.
I mean, usually like, 7 to 10 business days on average. That's what
Yeah.
we've seen for that program. Cash advances are 24 hours. So you
Yeah.
apply today, you can get funded tomorrow.
Sounds like the American dream.
Hey, business owners love fast money. A lot of the clients we work with, they don't want to send in a lot of documentation.
Yeah.
They want it to be as streamlined as possible. So, and, that's what we're able to offer them.
So what's the volume that you do with your company, like annually, on lending that you're providing to your customers?
Like as far as funding amount,
Yep.
so we'll do a couple million a year, like in funding amount. Primarily it's like owner operator truckers. This is primarily like I would say 70% of our business
Yeah.
to some larger trucking companies too. But we have partners that work for invoice factoring companies that they only do truckers, so they send us deals,
Yeah.
and we help them clients get working capital on top of that.
Yeah, makes sense. How do you, besides them sending you truckers, how do you go about growing your business, building relationships with truckers?
Yeah.
How do you find them? How do
We
you
do a
grow
lot
your
of.
business?
That's a great question. We do a lot of text campaigns, email campaigns, Facebook groups. Believe it or not, you get pretty creative in there. Cold outreach, a lot of cold outreach,
Yeah.
some LinkedIn, but we're using all these channels. Even TikTok, we've got a couple of responses on TikTok, so they're all over the place where you can find
I
clients.
I would assume, and see, I have no idea. I'm just like thinking about what the lifestyle of a trucker is like. They're on the road.
Yeah,
They have limited hours that they can actually drive, which means they have a bunch of hours that they spend either on social media or watching something. But they don't strike me as the crowd that hangs out on LinkedIn, just like you said.
no, but there's some bigger companies that do. There's bigger trucking companies that are well established, have maybe 6 trucks in their fleet, maybe more, that could use some growth capital.
But
So
they
it
they
depends what
wouldn't
the
necessarily be your client, right? Because like if I have 6 trucks, might have more substantial revenue. I might have better credit.
might, or you might be tapped out with your bank line. You need more credit. Your bank might not
Yeah.
lend you anymore.
Okay,
So
fair
there's
enough.
that
Yeah.
too. But no, the owner operator guy, like sometimes his truck breaks down. You got one truck, just you, and you need money to repair that truck, get it back on the road.
Yes.
So, that's a situation we ran into several times.
Okay, just looking forward, I feel like you're moving into a space like owner operated trucks for me is like a dying breed. Like if I look at where we are with technology and advancements, we're already in, I mean, you actually in the market where you already have driverless cabs.
Yeah, I know.
You might have already used it.
Driverless trucks next, yeah.
So driverless trucks is next. Doesn't that kind of disrupt your business model?
Well, I'll just have to focus on other businesses at that point, if that's the case, if it gets there.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't get there for a lot of these guys. They're doing it. It's all, a lot of them, it's all they want to do. It's all they know.
Yeah.
They're going to have to find a way to pivot. Obviously, so would I at that point. I would focus more on, manufacturing, construction, stuff like that, healthcare. I mean, there's always businesses that are going to need funding out there in every industry.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's just, I think if trucking is your primary business, I would really play that out in my mind and be like, okay, I think those 3.5 million truck drivers might have to shift their career because I think it's a very, very straightforward process to automate that once the guidelines, like I think it's right now, it's more a question of law than execution from a technical aspect. Like I think right now the liability questions are not clarified. So they don't do it. But from what I've seen in the self-driving space, and I've, for example, driven with like the more advanced Tesla package, the highway is actually the easiest part to automate because it's fairly predictable. It's only, I think, in the local delivery space or like the last mile where I think truck drivers will be for a longer time. But I think that especially the long distance driving will be the first to fall.
Well, you got risks with that as well. Like what happens if the truck just, breaks down and, or what happens if there's issues with the brakes or, it doesn't start. Like, I mean, who knows how that's going to look?
I think that's easy to mitigate because if you don't have one human in, let's say I run like Tesla itself will probably run its own delivery fleet. And they will just have thousands of trucks running on the major highways. And instead of having one human being on each truck, they will just have like a recovery fleet of humans that, okay, this truck has arrow, I don't know, 106. The truck is just going to pull over and, turn on its lights. Then a human comes and sees if it can like put it back on the road. And if not, they're just going to tow it.
That's a possibility. I wonder how far off we are from that happening. Maybe a few years.
I think it's really just a question of the regulatory environment. Like if the law is in place, if the liability is kind of clarified, if those things, that will happen rather soon. That's my personal assumption. And the way I think this might happen is that, the trucks can handle a highway by themselves. But maybe for the last, like for example, a truck that pulls into New York City, I would think that needs a human being 10 years, 20 years longer than a truck that just runs on the highway. Because there's just so much unpredictable stuff happening in New York and on the street. And I don't know how those sensors catch all of that. But I'm pretty sure that the highways themselves are low-hanging fruit. And that could be automated like as quick as like the next couple of years if the liability and everything is clarified.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, but you have some valid points regarding trucking. Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, kind of going back to your core business beyond the trucking. So what is the impact of what we've seen in the interest rate market, all of the hikes that the Fed went through in the last year? How did that impact your core business and the overall volume that you were able to transact?
Well, so we're still doing, pretty consistent volume compared to last year as well. It's on a similar trajectory. The only thing is, banks have tightened up as far as what they're lending, how much they're lending, and to who. Our lenders haven't stopped. I mean, they're not seeing as many files in general, like across the industry, but they're still lending. Their guidelines haven't really changed. They're willing to take chances, our lenders.
Yeah.
So it hasn't really... We haven't really seen the lag effect yet, I want to say. I think there's going to be a lag effect. I think they're going to tighten up once they figure out, well, the default rates are up because trucking is the highest default rate industry right now, currently in the lending landscape. These guys
why is that?
they can't keep up. I think it's the load times. I think it's I just think they're spending too much. You're all competing for the same loads, and I don't think there's as many opportunities currently. There's supply chain issues; those are still going on. I think that's more behind the scenes, though. It's not really being talked about, publicly or on the news, right? We're seeing a lot of truckers just like, yo, I need money. Like, I need money. And then they take the money 3 months in. It's like, now they miss a payment or they miss two payments in a row. And then we got to work with them. That's where the debt consolidation part comes in too. So some of these guys, they've taken 2 or 3 cash advances, right? And they're stacked. They're over leveraged. Technically, they need relief. So that's where we come in. We also have a partner who can cut those payments in half, give them some room. A lot of these are daily or weekly payments. So our debt consolidation partner will go biweekly or monthly for them in the interim and negotiate with the lender. This way the lender's okay. They're not going after their borrower. Everybody's like on the same page at that point. So that's an option if we have to go there. Worst case scenario to open up some cash flow.
Yeah, but what's happening in that scenario is that the overall amount that they actually of the lifetime horizon have to pay back significantly increases, right? Like they're just getting breathing room in that particular month or maybe quarter, but overall over the lifetime, they're actually ending up in a maybe worse situation despite
Sometimes
having
you end up
relief.
in a crunch if you over leverage. You think, oh, I want all this money in the short term. It's going to catch up with you at some point, like if you're not careful. So you don't want to, you want to be careful not to over leverage, but like you don't want to use money as just a temporary band-aid. You want to have an actual plan on what you're going to do with it and why. Like just don't take the money just to take it.
Do you think that's a common mentality and I would say actually that's a consumer mentality too. Like I think credit card debt has been ballooning over the last year or two again. It's again at a level where I think it was 08, 09, where
probably worse off right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been carrying, which is kind of looming in the background. But it seems to be that the mentality right now is not necessarily austerity while it should be austerity, like on a personal level as well as maybe on a business level, bringing expenses down, trying to maximize profitability. And, just like you said, don't take the money if you don't have a plan for it, how it gives you $2 back for the dollar.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people, to your point, a lot of people are over leveraged on the personal side, consumer side, right? I think there's some people that are more hesitant to borrow money now because of all the economic, the current economic environment.
Yeah.
There's some people like, well, if I borrow this, can I really pay it back? Like, truly, do I feel like I can afford it? That's understandable too.
But I think also the psychology around affording is very interesting. Like, for example, I've been looking at new cars lately because I think new cars are coming down in prices significantly. And I feel like the used car market is still quite pricey compared to the new car market. But then I also noticed there is like this thing where car dealers or maybe they give you a very attractive monthly rate which makes it look affordable, but the majority of people that maybe go for that car that only costs $400 a month, $500 a month, if they would actually have to pay the entire car in a reasonable amount of time, the full price, it wouldn't be considered affordable. But because, just like, what you said about the relief and the debt consolidation, because the monthly rate looks manageable, they go for it. But I think the problem is they don't do it with one item. It's not just the car or it's not just the debt consolidation. It's like, okay, now I feel like I have breathing room, like I can afford something else. And then maybe they finance another phone or something else.
Catches up with them.
And they're stacking all of those small, what originally looked like affordable monthly payments.
Yeah.
That actually break.
That's exactly what we deal with here with these advances. Okay, I got one advance. Yeah, I'm paying on it. Oh, I can use another one. Oh, let me get another one. Now you got, $2,000 a week you're paying, or $3,000 a week you're paying in payments. These are daily or weekly payments. So it's daily micro payments or one weekly payment, typically.
Yeah, and that's because the lender feels like, the more often I can hit them micro, the more of my money get back, because it's a high risk lending, right?
Yeah, because if they did one monthly payment, it's going to be pretty big. And what happens if they don't have, $15,000 on June 21st, and that's when your payments due, but you have $300 each day in your account that they can pull from?
Yeah. So what is a regular interest rate on these kind of loans?
So these
It
aren't
must
really
be
like
like in double
APR
digits.
based, so they're advances are called factor rates. So you're
Yeah.
looking at like between 40 to 50 cents on the dollar in that range on average.
Oh, wow.
So they're
This,
advanced on your
yeah,
future revenue. Ultimately, when you get receivables in, the goal is to pay them down with your receivables. There's early payment discounts. A lot of people take advantage of that too. The first 60 days, you pay it off, you save 10% off the total payback or payback amount. Yep.
yeah. Do you feel like that maybe truckers don't really understand the repercussions of these kind of financing methods?
I think they may understand. I don't think they always care, or I don't think
Okay.
they really understand the banking system here as far
Yeah.
as how to set up their credit. Like we also help them with that too. Like, how to set up your credit so you can get access to better capital
Yeah.
at some point. We'll give you the short-term bridge, but at some point you might want an SBA or a line of credit once you grow big enough. But I don't think they understand like how important their credit is. A lot of these guys have, 500, 520, 530 FICO scores.
Yeah. So
There's no other
what
option for them.
So what, let's say I'm someone that has that kind of FICO score and I want to really make a difference for my future. What are like the first couple steps besides making all my payments and, kind of making sure the consolidation happened and I'm getting off that? What are ways to, protect credit decline right now and also set myself up for future credit improvement? What are like the key steps I have to focus on?
Like first, I think you should, I would recommend anybody to, work with a credit repair company, a reputable one. If your credit's not in place already, they'll properly advise you on the steps to take in order to get that 680, right? You want that 680 at bare minimum
Yeah.
across all three bureaus. And then as far as what was the other part of your question?
Yeah, just like how can I protect the decline now and set myself up for an improvement in the future? What are like kind of the
As
key
far as
steps
like,
that?
yeah, protecting yourself from a decline, like you got to understand your threshold for risk right now. Like, can the business service that debt? If not, don't borrow. Like, you don't need to borrow right now. Like, don't borrow if you know, like, okay, a month in, I might decline. Like, I might decline. I might not have the revenue. Like, if you're seeing fluctuations in your revenue, that's a sure sign you probably shouldn't be borrowing. Like, if you're doing 40K one month and then 15K the next, you could still get capital, but you know, it's going to
Yeah,
pigeonhole. So you got to be, I think you got to be conscious of like why you're really borrowing. Like, do you have a specific plan in place? If not, I wouldn't recommend it.
yeah. Speaking a little bit about the three bureaus, how do they evaluate my credit or business credits? And how do I make sure that I like, for example, let's say I look at my FICO score and I've seen a second decline in 2 months.
Yeah.
What should be some of my first actions to take?
Like, so say you went to a bank and applied. Is that the scenario?
Yeah, or I just check my, like you can check your FICO score yourself, maybe on your Amex app or something. And you as a business owner, as a truck driver, as a personal individual, you're realizing that you're in decline, but you don't really understand maybe what exactly happened. Maybe you're slightly behind on some of your statements. But what are some of the steps that people can take to make sure that they are moving in the right direction so that they can actually get better terms in the future and get to that 680 number that you keep referring
Well, I
to?
think you gotta so the first step, any business credit company would advise somebody on is getting trade lines, right? So you can pay for trade lines, borrow other people's credit essentially. That's going to report to your credit report. So now it makes it look, you look more bankable to a bank, or, if you go apply for a credit card at Chase, now they're going to see that on your credit report. He has some
Yeah.
history, comparable credit. Now maybe we'll give him a 30K card. That's how you start building business credit, obviously. And then you want to consult with a credit expert. Maybe you have inquiries on your credit profile holding you back from your score going up. Maybe you don't have enough accounts. Maybe you need more accounts. So that's where the trade lines can come in. If you can't
What
get
is a
your
low
own.
number of accounts and like a reasonable number of accounts and a high number of accounts?
Well, for the people who are like 800 plus, I don't know, maybe you're there. They typically have like 15 to 20 accounts open reporting. So
And
that's
these could be different bank accounts as well as different cards as.
Yeah, like car
Or
loans too, like credit cards. Yeah, as long as
yeah.
you have like different accounts reporting to your credit report, and
Ah,
then like in the
okay.
low
Yeah.
end, 3 to 5 maybe.
Ah, I see. See, the funny thing is, me being immigrant, when I first came to this country, like T-Mobile didn't want to get me a phone card that wasn't prepaid, and I'm like, I can pay you the card for the whole year. Like I can pay the whole thing right now. And they're like, no, you have no credit. And I'm like, what does that even mean?
Yeah,
Like you're like a blank sheet of paper to us. We don't know you. You don't exist in the financial system, basically. And then a friend of mine who I knew was already defaulted on her student loans, she could get it. I'm like, how does that make any sense? Like, I know she cannot make the second month payment.
so well, how did you get your first card? What did you have to do?
So for my phone, initially, I started having a prepaid phone. And then I eventually started having like bank accounts. Then I went to the which back then when I was banking with Citibank. I went to Citibank and I asked them for a regular credit card, and they were like, "No, you have to get like one of those prepaid fake cards." And I'm like, "Isn't a debit card kind of the same thing? Like I already have the money in the bank and I'm debiting it." And they're like, "No, this is different." So basically, they're locking up whatever amount you want, like 5K, and then you can slowly chip away from that, and after maybe like 3 to 6 months you are somewhat eligible for a credit card with a very low credit.
Yeah, low
that
credit
was
limit.
yeah, that was one of the kind of ways they offered me to go. But what I did is I had another friend who just tagged me on their credit card. They attached my social security number to it, and it was an American Express. So I started having an American Express track record. And then I changed banks from Citibank to Charles Schwab, and Charles Schwab offered me an Amex in my name after maybe banking 2 years with them. And
Right.
from there, so it was a little bit of a process. It took me a couple of years to
And
establish
what you did
enough
was start a
credit.
relationship. Ultimately, that's what you did. That's what they want to see. Okay, you're making deposits with me now. We'll consider lending some to you. Yeah, I mean, 2 years. That's great. That's a relationship. Like banks want to see that you're starting a relationship with them. They also want to see that you're responsible. How do they do
Yeah.
that? By looking at your credit profile.
Yeah, that's kind of what I learned. But if coming from the outside, it's so funny because see, I'm from Germany, and in Germany, you basically have good credit if you're a blank sheet. Like if you don't have negative entries. Like in Germany, the system is kind of the opposite. You, as long as you don't have negative entries, you're considered credible, and then they might look at your actual assets. Like, okay, he has a house, and you have to it depends what you want the money for. But for example, all of those small finance issues, like let's say I want to buy a big TV or something and I want to finance it, they pull a report on me. And as long as I don't have negative entries, I'm kind of okay to buy it. So it works a little bit the other way around. So for me,
Wow.
coming to the United States was very surprising. I'm like, I mean, I literally have the cash in the bank to pay for this, and you don't want to get me the
Yeah.
the phone. I'm like, this is dumb.
That's interesting. Wow. It's so different in Germany. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But everything we just spoke about in like the last 30 minutes, it's a very complex system, and you can either learn how to navigate through it like yourself, or maybe credit repair companies and others, or even what you mentioned in the very beginning, how somebody can shift from one card to another to stick with those 0% interest rates and just like keep moving it. But it's like a full blown, you need to really understand it, and if you don't, it's definitely set up in a way where I feel like it can and seriously hurt your financial health as an individual or a business owner.
If you're irresponsible or you're ignorant to the system, like you're going to pay for it. If you want to borrow
Yeah,
money and you don't know that you're not doing the work to understand the system, or you're not working with somebody who does, you're going to pay for it. Literally, like with these advances, you're going to pay for it. You'll get the money, but it's going to cost you more than you probably want to pay.
yeah, that's kind of a feeling that I have being being in the US for over a decade now, that if you don't understand the small print, it's better to not do something.
Yeah, no, no kidding.
Yeah. So where did the mindset come on your end to start your own business? You did mention that you were 1099 at first, but you didn't really hit traction till you started to do it for yourself. What gave you
Great.
kind of the entrepreneurial spirit or the bug that made you go out by yourself?
Yeah, so great question. I love that. So I've had a lot of jobs in my life, before starting this, and I just didn't work. I'd be there 3 months here, 3 months there. I just couldn't I just didn't like authority for some reason, right? And it wasn't out of ego. It was because I just felt like I was in a box and I
Yeah.
couldn't really, I had to feel like I couldn't think. Like I couldn't think. I'm just like following directions, right? So, and then I meet this guy in Arizona, brought him some deals. I was doing my own work on the side. I brought him some deals. He never told me where they went. So I started having a trust issue there as far as, well, how do I know what I'm going to be getting paid? So something wasn't lining up, and I felt like maybe he's undercutting me. He's taking my deals, submitting them, and just going around me, and then funding the clients. I started having that feeling.
Yeah.
So then that's when I just broke away from him and started off on my own. But I think the mindset comes from just not wanting to feel like somebody else is in control of your day to day. And
Yeah.
that's powerful because now you can think, you can be more effective, you gain more clarity in that position. And we're doing a podcast now. I couldn't do this working at a job right
Yeah.
now.
But also if you live that way, you have all the responsibility, like, which
Yeah,
maybe not everybody wants to have. Like, if next month there is no money in the bank, it's all on you. If there's no new clients lined up, it's all on you. If the business doesn't grow, it's basically all on you. And that's a level of responsibility that maybe not everybody has. And that's something I'm learning. There's like a real difference between people that are in it for themselves and like trying to make things happen on their terms and have that level of freedom.
yeah. But also, yeah, that's something a lot of people don't talk about in the entrepreneurial space is the amount of pressure you really face when it's just you and your own thoughts in your own space, working alone all day, working with a team, whatever. There's a lot of pressure, and like sometimes I don't know about you, but sometimes I have a hard time sleeping at night. I'm thinking about some deal tomorrow, or I understand and I meditate too. Be present, clear your mind. But the reality is there's still things that happen and you're still like, you got a big deal and you want to know like, man, like you want to get across the finish line and you can't sleep. Like
Yeah.
you feel the pressure,
But
that's
I
very cool.
think that doesn't really go away too much. Like even the people that been in the real estate space for decades, they still, I mean, it becomes more like business as usual, but at the same time not. And I've like other high stake players, I think it never truly becomes just like business as usual, and I think that's a good thing. It's like there a little bit of tingling should remain in what we do, and maybe if it doesn't, we can take it to another level because it means we got so accustomed,
Yeah.
we everything digested. Maybe we're just more capable and we can take it to another level.
Like one of my mentors said, like too much pressure is going to make you bitter and not enough pressure is going to make you soft. So there's got to be like an
Yeah.
in between so you
Yeah,
can really
and
see your potential.
that also seems to be where like the flow state hits, when they studied the flow state, that basically they said if the challenge is just there, that you feel like your skill set gets stretched, but you also still feel like you can somewhat handle it when you stretch yourself. Like
Yes,
anything beyond that is frustrating because you can't handle it. Anything below that kind of leads maybe to boredom because you feel like it's just too easy.
100%.
So in that sense, maybe where are you stretching yourself right now? Where are you taking things?
So in my mind, I wanna like bring on team members, right? Like I have partners. I have 1099 referral partners, right?
Yeah.
I want to like my next step would be like bringing on an assistant, right? Maybe growing this where I can alleviate some of, the menial things and then, take some, I don't want to say take pressure off my shoulders, but really just focus on what I need to focus on, which is, the deal flow aspect, and somebody else can handle all the administrative and stuff like that. So that would be like me pushing myself because I never thought when I first started, I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to be a solopreneur. Like, I never
Yeah.
thought like at some point though, you feel like you're capping off as a solopreneur and you're like, there's another level. It just hits you. There's another level. There's always another level. There's room to grow. And if you're on a growth path, it's like personally, I don't think I'd be content just having the same kind of year over and over and over. So that's my next level of growth is working with people, possibly bringing on a team
Yeah.
internally. Yeah.
Where would you like to hire that team? You want somebody who's local in maybe in Scottsdale, or you're open to having remote workers? Or?
Yeah, well, I've talked to other people in my space. I think they have remote workers. So I think Philippines, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That do the outreach, that do all the administrative appointment setting. So, other guys doing pretty well in my space who I talk to, that's one of their strategies. They don't really have offices per se. There are broker shops like in New York
Yeah.
City, guys just pounding the phones all day. Like, that's not my approach. That's a typical broker shop setting. But I've been more relationship driven. As far as like hiring, though, I think it doesn't have to be local.
I think that's the right route to think. Like many of our partners, people we work with, people we appreciate, we all set up shop overseas, whether it's in South America or the Philippines. I highly recommend Filipinos for their work ethic, and I think they have really something going for themselves culturally.
Yeah.
But I also recorded an episode with Nick Huber. He's pretty big into Shepherd. I mean, he's also an investor in it, but in the early stage,
Is he into storage, Nick Huber?
yes, yeah,
Yeah, I'm familiar with him. Okay.
yeah. So he has 45 people on the payroll, 10 US based, I think. 15 are based in Colombia, and the rest is in the Philippines.
See, that's a whole nother level of responsibility. 45 people on payroll. See, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it's just above 1.2 million in a year in what is salary. Yeah,
Pretty good.
Having said that, I think it's the right place to look, because it's what you can do with the proper, like a diligent kind of worker overseas is it will kind of keep the pressure off your plate that we were talking about with maybe the truckers, the businesses that come to you, because you can build a predictable kind of monthly salary base for your business that you can still work with pretty effectively.
Right.
And you might not have the exact same output like 40 hours for 40 hours, but also it comes at the fraction of the price. And the thing is, I think if you put a little bit of effort in finding the right individual, you will have an amazing work ethic, because they're actually feeding their family. They want to do well. They also want to deliver. They take pride in their work.
I think they're loyal. Like, as long as you treat them right, they're gonna still show up for you every day.
Well, I think that's true globally. I think even I want to, if I'm in a work relationship or if I'm in a partnership, or anybody in America wants to be treated right. But one of the things that I noticed in America, being a business owner for nearly a decade now, is there's just the work ethic is out of the window, and the entitlement is so high.
So high, man.
And what I think maybe young Americans don't understand is that there is people lined up outside the country to get here to work harder and show better work ethic, because they appreciate the opportunity that they have in the United States, and that's something that I don't see young people in America kind of representing. I think there is a part of America that is not proud to be here and have the opportunity.
100%. Like, it's like I'm owed because I'm an American. Like, I should be given this. That's the mentality that's floating around right now. Absolutely. So guys like you come in here. Guys like you come over and destroy it. You kill it because the work ethic's already there, the discipline. Next thing you know, you guys are soaring past most Americans, because you don't have the entitlement when you come over here. You have the drive, the hunger.
But I also, it took me a little bit. The first couple of years, I was just working hard, and I didn't really understand what was going on here, what the opportunity really was. But then I realized, like my parents at home, they would have to work so much harder given the system, kind of the way things are set up. You can just grow better in the United States. You can just achieve more. You're speaking English. Like, if I'm in Germany, Austria, wherever, if I'm not speaking English, I cannot hire Colombians. I cannot hire Filipinos, and I don't have the US dollar to have an advantage in terms of currency exchange to because that's another one. We have the United States dollar, which still is the world's reserve currency, which means everybody in the world is to some degree happy if you can pay them in US dollar.
Right.
So
As of right now, we don't know if it's going to be that way in a couple of years.
yeah, I mean, obviously there is a shift, and anybody who kind of reads up on Ray Dalio and how the change of power usually goes,
Oh, right.
we're in the end of the cycle if people don't change their attitude. Like, this doesn't need to be the end of the cycle, but the way I think directionally we're headed there because of the attitude that is out there.
So you're a big Ray Dalio guy too?
Yeah, I love his books and his videos, and especially I think the videos. He made them in like 45 minutes, and now lately he just dropped another one to compress it into 5 minutes. I think they're almost kids friendly. Like, you can show that to a kid, and they will get it.
Oh, he made it simplified. I saw that video too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think is he fully right? No, but I think he's pointing to the right points of, like, this a country that feels like it's on top and gets too entitled, I think is on the slope.
Yeah,
Like,
they're
you
on the
need
hard times ultimately.
yeah, the work ethic that got us here is not the work ethic that will allow us to stay here.
Correct.
And I think we've seen it in Europe. It already played out. It just looked towards Europe. They got a little bit too creative with all of their ESG compliance and all of that, and they nearly hit the fan when Russia turned off the energy.
Yeah.
Like, they were really struggling to sit in hot houses in the winter. That the energy prices for the average consumer more than doubled. It was like insane, just so they could actually heat their home. But that was all driven by being maybe a little bit too fancy with certain things.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's happening here. We're getting fancy. We're getting soft.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? You gotta stay in a level where you maintain humble and hungry, I think, and where you still put in the work and you have the attitude. And I think then we have a couple decades to go here, where the US dollar will be strong, and this country is still today the country of opportunity for many. Otherwise, millions of people wouldn't want to come here every year.
Absolutely. I agree, 100%.
Yeah.
You can still see the hunger on your face, man, 10 years later. I mean, you've been in business for a decade. You can still see it.
Yeah, I mean, but I have that thing. Every day I feel like I'm just getting started. I just learned a little bit more in the last decade than I knew before I came here. But I have that mentality within myself. I'm just getting started.
It's funny you mention that. I feel like, even because I started this in 2019, I'm like, I'm just getting started. Like, I'm still at the beginning. And I'm like, wait, this has been over 4 years now? Like, wow. I'm like, I gotta do something.
But I also feel like that's very healthy. Like, I hope I can keep that. I hope that doesn't stop. Like, because it keeps me curious, it keeps me learning, it keeps me on my toes. And I think ultimately it will also make sure that I don't get wiped out with something stupid.
Right. So you're not really a solopreneur then. You have a team.
Yeah, over time we build a team. Like, so I don't know. I never try to define myself as a solopreneur.
Yeah.
But we do have a team.
Yeah, I don't like to give labels either. It's just like, there's stages to it, right? Like, everybody starts when they start. It's like you're starting by yourself, ultimately. Some people stay by themselves. But yeah, I was just curious.
Well, Joe, where can people find out more about you, connect with you?
Well, LinkedIn is I like to hang out on LinkedIn, Facebook, Joe Nicolosi. You just type in Joe Nicolosi, you'll find me on LinkedIn. Starcadecapital.com is my website. Starcade Capital. Yeah, you can find me in those places. I'm even on TikTok at Business Funder 13. So
awesome. We'll also make sure to add all of those to the show notes so that anybody can connect with you. How's TikTok been working for you? I find it such a weird platform.
It's fun, man. I've got a couple of people that actually messaged me on there from some of the posts I put up about funding. So, well, I'm like, then my eyes started opening. Like, wait, maybe I got to go hear more.
I think Gary Vee would tell you to put a lot of time on that.
Oh, Gary Vee's like, Gary Vee telling me you're not putting enough time in.
Yeah, that's for sure. Because it's like early in the game. You're probably one of the few guys who are like business funding on TikTok. So if that relates to anybody, you will be like up in their reach immediately.
Yeah, well, there's not a lot of truckers per se on TikTok hanging out. Maybe there are. Maybe they're driving,
Sure.
they're pulling over.
I would question that. I'm pretty sure that they
You think they are?
spend some time on TikTok.
Maybe they're pulling over at the truck stop,
Yeah.
looking at TikTok.
Maybe you should spend more time on truck stops and just look at their phones and see what they're scrolling on, and then you can make sure that you're on those screens.
That's a good idea. Say I could just hang out at truck stops all day because they're coming through, pitch funding, boom. That's a good idea.
Yeah. There you go. Well, Joe, thank you so much for your time. This was a great, insightful conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Hannes. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us at The Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.